Welcome to Braindrop by VCOM Solutions. Each episode, we talk to IT leaders and experts, explore recent projects, and learn from their triumphs and challenges. We hope today's episode provides you with a unique window into the world of IT, where creativity meets problem solving and technology drives businesses forward. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo. Now let's drop into today's conversation. Today on Braindrop by VCOM Solutions, I am joined by Michael Loggins, the Vice President of IT at Ultimate Technologies Group, a commercial audiovisual and information technology services company that provides global virtual communication and collaboration solutions. Michael has over 20 years as an IT leader and effectively drives teams to align business needs, improve performance and customer success, and standardize global IT operations. Michael, good to have you on the podcast.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, how did you get started in IT exactly?
Well, I when I went to college, I originally went to college actually to be a music teacher. I'm a classically trained tuba player, so that was my lifelong goal until I realized that teaching wasn't going to be for me, and music itself wasn't probably going to pay. It was going to be a good side gig, but not pay the bills. So, went back and kind of looked at what had always excited me as growing up, and growing up as computers were rolling into my classrooms and things like that. That was always I got a great primer into computers in my fifth grade class. So when I was looking back at what I like to do, I like to tinker around with computers. So I enjoyed my MIS type classes at IU. So got back, got done with school, and started taking what were the boot camps. So I'd spend 3 Saturdays learning A+, or 4 Saturdays doing a CCNA, and just kind of building up some basic knowledge that would be relevant to the to a job. Finally landed that first IT job. Took about 9 months after I had started the education piece, and I was working at as a help desk. So that was the first IT job, working help desk at a small consulting organization. So running around fixing printers, loading drivers, fighting Windows 95 and 98, those types of things. And from there, I've always had a mantra and was always raised that whenever there's an opportunity to do something that could potentially have importance, whether it's importance for who's asking or importance for you, you say yes. So that's what I did. Every opportunity that came up was like, hey, we're upgrading these servers. It was, hey, can I be there and watch? It was, hey, we're going to go do, we're going to refresh all these systems. Cool. I'm in. And I basically put my eyes, ears, hands on anything I potentially could put on while I was there at that first organization. And that's pretty much been the mantra. I mean, if you look through my as I look through my career, it's been, hey, I took this opportunity, then I took every other opportunity, whether no opportunity was too big or too small, to get my hands on and to get my eyes on, because that's, I think not only did it help me make decisions on my career path, but I think it's made me well-rounded in my skill and capabilities that really still allow me to do it today. I still get into things that, are so outside my depth of experience or knowledge, but I still, I'm in. Let's do this. Let's figure it out. So,
repeat the mantra again.
Basically, if there's ever an opportunity to do something that can have a positive impact for somebody who's asking or yourself, you do it. You say yes.
When did that sort of come into play? When did you become that opportunist, if you will? And but not only that, you used positive, a positive impact as your guiding star, right? As the thing that you say yes to. When did that come about? And then how did you decide what was positive impact and what wasn't?
Yeah, I think that was, in a lot of ways, is how I was raised. Both my parents modeled that in how they ran our house, the household I grew up in, how they worked in the church. and worked with the within the community, they were heavily involved in anything that could provide positive impact, and so I'd say learned at a very early stage in life. But I think one of the big things is, that, when you're 12, 13 years old and you have opportunities sitting in front of you, you don't understand what positive impact is. So there's some of that is, as a 13-year-old or whatever, is the selfish. What's this do for me? But, because of the modeling that I received at home and the community I grew up in, I was never really felt like I was put in a situation where I was doing something that was solely, self-serving only. Those were not the opportunities that were given to me or were offered. It was usually, hey, Mike, here's an opportunity to do something good. You also get this. And that was exactly where I needed to be. So that was perfect at growing up. And, I model that. I try to model that for my kids as well. Different generation, different, some things unfortunately are not as cut and dry as they used to be. But it's just one of those things. I think that can set that mindset, manifests, positivity. It manifests good things. And I'm a firm believer is you're going to get out whatever you give in. So if I want to be successful, I've got to find different ways to help other people and important things become successful.
You alluded to it, but I think the really awesome thing about that mindset is when you're focused, right, on positive impact on other people, like you said, it comes back to you, right? And you feel good because you did it. And they probably left a positive impact on you as well, or the experience probably did as well. And so having that mindset is not you're giving yourself up or you're losing yourself. In fact, doing that is you find yourself even more. So I think it's really a win-win.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's one of the traits that now is being pushed back and being taught to leaders and from a modern leadership standpoint. But when I had the opportunity to get into leadership, from a professional standpoint, it was for the same reason why I did leadership things when I was in high school. I mean, my first true leadership thing, I joined the 4-H. Now I'm a suburban kid. I never lived on a farm. I've only been to farms when we went on field trips. But I joined the 4-H because they had a leadership program. I joined the 4-H because there was a cute girl in it, but I ended up getting in there and being part of their leadership program. And that's when I also, realized for the first time, hey, helping where I get that mantra, or, helping somebody else achieve something is an achievement for myself. And looking at that, like you said, energy doesn't get created. It's either positive or negative. Everything out there, and for me, helping other people, helping people succeed, and doing it in a way that feels good, that provides so much energy on my day for my day to day. Like I said, that from that aspect of it, I think leadership has been a good fit for me. And luckily, the way I've done it, and from a technology standpoint, once again, I get to have both sides of it. I get to help other people. I get to lead and do great things alongside people. But then every once in a while, I get to go dive headfirst into tech and be a nerd for a while, and and really kind of go back into the days of just continual learning and just trying to find new things that are out there. So
Yeah, when you were your first job in IT, of course, and you lived by that mantra, you were able to say yes to a lot of tech things, right? And you were able to learn a
absolutely.
lot in the world. So you definitely walked the walk. As a leader now, how do you continue to keep that mantra up and continue learning from, of course, like you just said that you do get to dive into tech from time to time, but how do you keep your gear sharp and oiled, if you will, with tech changing so much?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is, there's so much information that's passed back and forth on social media. It's not always obvious, what's going on. But you can read into things. I'll see somebody say something in LinkedIn, and then I'll send me down a rabbit hole on either in LinkedIn, in Google, in YouTube. Sometimes security related. A lot of times I will end up spending unfortunately several hours unplanned in Reddit and subreddits, learning just a lot of things. And then the availability of training and lab courses and things like that available for free is amazing when it comes to the tech standpoint. There's at least 4 or 5 full free Python development courses on YouTube. I mean, and taught by not horrible Python classes, taught by Python instructors. You'd normally pay hundreds of dollars for that, and it's free out there. So, and so that's how I've done a lot of technical training over the last several years. Is I just find a topic that's interesting to me, and then I go dig, and then I'll find somebody who is teaching it in a manner where we do it as well as they teach it. So I get to actually I was trying to build a automation practices, and I knew Python was going to be the language. So I was like, I got to go learn Python, so I at least understand not how to do the automation as much at that point, but how to call BS when somebody tells me it can't be done, or how to help influence things that can be done. Help sit around the whiteboard, so I have to learn this stuff. That's how my brain works. So I sat down, and in about 6 weeks, I finished the Python course. Do not ever ask me to code in Python if you want to work well. I can figure out how to make it work, but but it was enough that I could then turn around and help my employees, help the projects and things like that. So there's just so much information out there, and it's all free, but it doesn't come to you. You have to read between the lines. You have to be watching and listening for things. If somebody talks about they're doing something and they mention a tool that I've never heard, first thing I'm hitting that tool up. What is this? And I have found whole technology stacks that serve specific niche purposes that way. And you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. But there's like all this software out there that does this, or there's this whole practice of group of practitioners that this is all they do. So it's really you can't stop learning. I mean, I think I think it's the same no matter what role you have and what industry you work in. Your value is the continual sharpening of that saw. And if you don't, you have a shelf life. It doesn't matter how good you are at what you do now. You have a shelf life, and I never want to be obsolete.
That's right.
So that you got to have a little bit of that Peter Pan syndrome with your career. You never want to fully grow up. You always want to make sure that you're learning.
A previous guest was like, it's not about I can't until, it's I can if. It's this idea of forward thinking and always being able to say yes, because you'll do what it takes to understand what that means. With that being said, like, what are your thoughts with everything you've consumed and with breaking news? What are your thoughts on the current state of IT? What are the game changers and the challenges, and what's caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, IT, the speed of IT keeps getting faster and faster. It'll never slow down. It'll just be different frame of reference. But because of the reliance on IT is now speeding up every other industry as well. I mean, look at the innovation that's happening all over the world and in all the different industries. It's not, insurance is not, market is not advancing. InsurTech is advancing. Medical technology is what's advancing. Financial technology is what's advancing so far, and so it's even more critical in the tech space to stay relevant, because IT's job fundamentally, and this is back even in the 70s and 60s, 70s, 80s, when they just had the big mainframes and punch card systems. Our job is to enable the business to do great things, to meet their strategy. What that means has changed, because the company before didn't rely on the computers to do anything other than massive calculations and clerical work. Now, technology is not supportive of the business. It is the business. If you are, very few industries can purposely not rely on technology and be successful and scale. The fact is that most industries require it. And the companies that do the best in their industries are usually the ones who have figured out how to harness that the best, and who've used that to become a differentiator, who've used that to create better customer experiences or even employee experiences. So, and I think this is one of those places where, as IT, we don't get the credit for. I think, but at the other hand, on the opposite side, we don't deserve a lot of the credit, because if you look at how a lot of larger organizations, even medium-sized organizations, work, as we're growing, IT isn't actually the one driving. Somebody in the business found something that they need to do to make their job better, and they did it. In a lot of companies, shadow IT is the innovation of an organization. And, and typically corporate IT, security and IT, we become the obstacles to doing really cool things. It's getting a lot better, but I still see it every day when I'm talking to peers. We get in the way. We get in the way of a lot of different things, and it's all for good reason. It's not like we're just stingy. But yeah, innovation doesn't sit a lot of times in corporate IT anymore. And so, although I think IT absolutely needs a little bit more credit for what their capability and possibilities are within an organization, I think IT needs to, in a lot of places, step up and embrace the shadow IT. I don't believe in getting, there's things you have to stop with shadow IT because of security and all those things. But that growth, that innovative mindset that someone in your company is showing by doing that, needs to be celebrated and praised to a certain degree.
I love it when, because you're only the second person ever to say this to me, but I love it when people try to challenge the concept of shadow IT and actually spin it into a positive, because it is so associated with a negative connotation. And people might even be like, listen, hearing this and going, no, shadow IT is bad. But I just love that spin of like, well, but that's, they must be using it because it's valuable to them. And if we let them do that, then something could come out of that we would never really discover ourselves. Like you said, cybersecurity is important. We still need to make sure that we are safe and secure. So how do you create a ground where people can innovate and have that trust while still not breaching or risking a security breach for your organization?
Yeah, a lot of that goes around common sense governance. You can go put in, any of the ISO standards, any of this, cybersecurity framework standards, and you can make your risk posture, reasonable. But then you absolutely will kill. Where there's always been a balance between, effectivity of security and ability to run a business. It's the same for innovation. The ability to be innovative requires more breadth than the guardrails. The key is to put the guardrails up, in a way that as transparent as possible to the people who are innovating, but it keeps them safe. Because they're innovating to make their job easier, to make them more efficient or effective in their organization. They don't want to break your company. They don't want to break IT. And so it's just a matter of, you've got to put those guardrails up. Anyone from a security standpoint, IT should live and breathe security. I've been very glad to see that a lot of these security groups are getting dissolved because they're becoming part of the other groups. But when you look at what your employees are looking for, what your customers are looking for, the goal has to be to provide that mitigating control, to provide those better technologies, transparent to the experience, which it's complete. It's, as a whole, is impossible, but it's a goal we should always be striding towards, and it's one that you constantly have to recalibrate. What was good today may not be good in 6 months, not because security posture has changed, but because what the business wants to do has changed, or what you are trying to help guide the business to do has changed. Some of the more careless people with IT security when they're innovating is IT. So, we're the first ones to open up a firewall to go port to go figure something out, or go spin up VMs and not pay attention to them till we can go figure stuff out. So shadow IT inside of IT needs those same guardrails as well. So it is one of those things where, to really, enhance that innovation, it is a different way you manage and run IT.
I,
It's not trying to figure out how to fit everything into a very well-defined box of regulation and governance. It's building your governance like an amoeba, so it can move as it needs to, and the walls are semi-permeable. So when you need to go outside the bounds, you can, but it requires energy and action, and it's visible.
I like that idea of creating governance around innovation, right? Like, how can we best create an environment where our people can innovate safely? And I like that mindset rather than trying to think small and trying to reduce and try to lock down and be strict so that there is, sure, that might secure your environment forever, but it doesn't allow anyone else to feel free. I like that idea of, no, we care about you guys as workers to succeed and thrive. We want to create a safe place for you to do that. And I think I like that switch in thinking for sure.
Well, and I think one of the other things, so having that mindset when you're trying to foster innovation, nowadays is imperative to just operating. That conversation of building guardrails, but wide guardrails, is critical in industry, whether it's medical, manufacturing, with the introduction of IoT. You've got to, IoT is going to happen. If it hasn't already happened, it's happened in your environment. Your choices are to pin it down until it works like enterprise IT, and then it doesn't work, or or let it loose a little bit more. And there are ways to protect it transparently, so you can do that. You're seeing that anytime IT converges with another set of technologies, is that boundary has to widen a little bit further. Because when we try to shove it into the enterprise IT, box, it doesn't fit.
Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. I think everything will come back to that. But let's. I realized I introduced you and your company, but you never got to really talk about yourself in the context of the company that you currently work at. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your IT team and your environment, how long you've been there, and how many team members you have, and ultimately the size of the company in general and how many people you support.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I left a global organization where 25,000 employees. I was all over the globe in responsibilities, and this company I'm in now, very different, and it's very cool, of what we're trying to do here. Ultimate Technologies Group is a 6-year-old audio video integrator and IT services organization located just north of Indianapolis, Indiana. We crazy fast growth. We have some amazing customers here, and that are located all over the world, which once again makes everything a lot more interesting in how things operate. But what we're seeing is a shift in the AV industry. We're seeing a shift to AV becoming IT. For years was a facilities project. It was hang a projector on the wall, find a place where you can put an HDMI output and put a screen on the wall, hang in some TVs. Now it is an IT. That's all IT infrastructure now. There are endpoints on IT's network. Their data and their content comes from IT. Conferencing is now a part of everyone's normal day-to-day, whether it be with Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever it is. Those things. So IT is now having to get involved. The problem that exists is most AV integrators are not looking forward and seeing that the way AV integrators have traditionally worked, how they traditionally sell, traditionally implement and support, does not fit with how IT organizations run. Your point of contact is no longer someone who's responsible for the facilities, but a CIO or a VP of infrastructure, or somebody who is responsible for, from a logical standpoint, a much larger portfolio of risk elements. You've got people who have very little skill or tolerance for technology now every day, having to use technology and approaching it as a simply as a AV service as we typically have done it leads to bad service. It leads to frustrated customers. One of the first things I realized when I got here was that when we're talking to customers, we could have millions of conversations with our customers, but IT was never in the room. IT usually found out that they had bought a bunch of AV equipment the day we showed up to install, or the day before when they get this list of all these requirements they have to have done before we show up. So, and that's a lot of times overlooked because we just need to physically put it in. This isn't a big deal. Before, you didn't really need IT to do much. Now these are IT endpoints. So, getting IT involved at our customer sites at the very beginning, working with them to make sure the environment is set up right the first time. So, we don't run into performance issues and then put another whole change cycle in. Honoring their change management processes. I think what a lot of people forget is IT's got a million other things to do to make sure the company is working on a daily basis. Coming in with new endpoints that they don't necessarily understand, to do things that they don't necessarily have necessarily the administrative capacity to handle, with no warning, you're throwing everything out. You're throwing, their day out. You're throwing their support models out. You're throwing their change models out. So we really need to get that back in line with where IT is. Then, because all this stuff is IT based, the adjacencies between other things that companies can do is much more vast. We see a lot of our competition and a lot of our partners in this area. They're adding IT services and they're going deep in IT, but they're doing that at the expense of AV. They'll go from being a titled "We are an AV integrator" to, in a couple of years, on 2 rows on their website of all the services they provide, all of a sudden AVs on the second column all the way at the bottom. Our goal here is really leverage those adjacencies, knowing that AV is at the heart of this. The goal of connectivity and communications with different people, wherever they are, is at the heart of this. So it doesn't have to be limited to just, AV solutions. There's plenty of IT companion solutions that go with it that allow customers to have a better adoption rate with a lot of this technology. There's things even like furniture and, room layout, lighting. That's all part of this that has an impact, not just on does the video look good, but are you able to create an environment where people lighting in a room is not causing problems with people who paying attention or having energy. If it's too dark, people get drowsy, too cold, too hot, those types of things. So what we do is really look at the holistic picture. What is the connection problem? What is the connection story that we need to help the company write? And for obviously since COVID, a lot of that has been Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, Rooms, and technology. But we're now starting to see, as the return to work to the offices is really picking up, and I think overall the sentiment is we'll be back to near pre-pandemic, office work, within the next couple of years for most industries. The needs of an employee have changed. The needs of the organization and how their employees work has changed. So once again, that's all in the same realm of this workplace technology. And being where I am, I get the benefit of bringing in that enterprise IT, understanding. And, we can bring in here's where these adjacencies are. Here's how we can grow organically without ditching our past, without ditching the base of what has made us who we are. We were created because our owner has had so many horrible experiences with service and support with AV. He built a company basically to provide better service and support for AV, and we've been able to grow at ridiculous, we've had ridiculous growth over the last 6 years. And a lot of that is because we take that approach. Our goal is not to implement a piece of equipment. Our goal is to provide you a solution that then we can turn around and provide you the service and support on. Because once again, most IT organizations are not sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for another platform to get brought in or another set of systems to get in. They're already drowning. And this is just, putting, extra bricks, in their arms. And, we built this company in a way that we're able to take those away from, take those on so IT can do what really IT is good at and what IT needs to do to make the company successful.
Yeah, I like that. It's like IT supports the company, and you're a company that supports IT that supports the company.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, so what's a kind of an open question here, but what's a recent project or initiative that you worked on? What was the reason for taking it on, and the goals for this project?
I'm going to go back just a little bit because a lot of the projects I'm working on here are they're really cool, but they are future facing.
Right.
But one that so when at a previous the global manufacturing organization I was at, uh, I was given the opportunity to unify, in essence, the entire organization globally, 70 plus companies across the globe, 25,000 employees. Um,
Wow.
and we were doing it in a manner to support a large change of initiative from the CEO who wanted the company to stop acting like 70 plus different companies and start presenting at least to the customers as a single organization. Wanted to leverage the abilities that we had globally that our organization up to that point had been built specifically to support a more siloed operation, country by country. So IT was one of the first. It was the first group that had the mandate of let's make everything start working as a global organization rather than an organization of many international organizations. So uh, the part of that I'm most proud of is we created an entire global IT organization that supported the rest of the IT organizations with the global strategies in mind. And we built those into a governance and compliance group. Obviously, when you're talking global projects, you have privacy rules and security laws around the globe that we don't necessarily have here in the U.S. or don't have yet in the U.S. And so, we have to be mindful of every one of those. And then we had a actual security operational group, which helped make sure that anything we were doing we were doing it right and had the tools and the capabilities to understand it. We had an infrastructure team that was obviously responsible for any of the global strategic infrastructure that we were implementing. And we were in the process of implementing 11 total data center rebuilds across the globe. And then I had a team that was specific from a business architecture, business analysis, project management group that basically was there to support the relationships between the business division's IT departments and us. So we were able to work together. We weren't going to grow to be 500-600 people in our global IT organization to support it. So we had to make sure that we could leverage and work and cooperate with the people at each one of the companies. Major thing we did though was we created a common standardization of what a security posture looks like at any of these organizations. As we got involved with these organizations, we were all running around trying to figure out why, how did they get this ransomware? What are we going to do with this system over here? Who's got these backup tapes? I mean, we were helping countries all over the world, rebuild themselves. And it seemed like, one is too many, but it seemed like it was, it was crazy. And it was just because everyone had their own thing. So we went down the path of what were the best enterprise capabilities that we could put in place that allowed us to have a lot of flexibility, and we could deploy and manage both globally and regionally. And we built a series of 7 different systems that we considered it our security stack. That when we put it together, we created a posture that the groups that were done with the security stack when I left, we hadn't had any incidents in those places because not only was there better tools in place, there were people watching those tools, and we had started educating our employees on, you know, from a cybersecurity standpoint, not only on a cybersecurity standpoint, but also on a kind of a physical security standpoint. What to look for? What to we didn't want an issue like Target where somebody comes in and does something, and walks right past all of our security controls because we just let a visitor in the door, or we didn't pay attention to who that visitor was or what they were doing when they were there. So really taking that holistic approach to security and making that standard across the globe. The other thing it did is it allowed us to start sharing people's time and energy and knowledge across the globe, because we didn't make everybody in IT in every country an administrator on the system. Certain sets of tools had their administration and their strategic endpoints sitting in Europe, some in Asia, some in North America. So the teams had to start working globally to make decisions. And so that, that's probably the coolest and one of the most interesting projects we've ever done, because we were fixing or changing 60 years of tradition of how a company runs. We were changing how all these people cooperate and collaborate across all these countries. We were raising the security posture to help bring about a business continuity strategy that the new CEO had wanted to put in place. And we were doing it all while we were operating the company. We didn't, in any of these places, have to, take down any operations to do it. And were able to build a great coalition of support from the business in different areas of the world, and they helped drive a lot of this for us, rather than us, sitting there and hopefully kicking and screaming and why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? This is what the mothership said to do. We didn't have to do that. In fact, in most places, they started pushing us to go faster and faster, because they didn't want to be the one company who didn't have it yet. And it was really cool how we saw the collaboration of not only IT but the businesses really start coming out of nowhere, and we really were able to build something really cool. So
Yeah, no, I this sounds like an incredible project. I mean, you just the, but not only that, kind of a big project to kind of undertake and complete. Obviously, the results have shown itself, and to unify and really bring the silos together and improve that communication and collaboration. But also, you see it pushes like innovation and these companies all over the place to kind of be better and push themselves to be better. I can only imagine with a project of that magnitude that it wasn't, not that it could have been smooth sailing, but there was a lot that went into it. And so what were some of those potentially challenges or obstacles, or, the things that you learned the hard way or the easy way because of this project?
There's a lot of obvious answers there. Working with something that's globally facing, language was a huge issue. I think I guess my assumption, and this is that crazy arrogant American assumption that I get checked on, that I just figured most of the rest of the IT world also spoke English. I know they spoke their native language, but I just figured IT's in English. I was wrong. I was very wrong. And so learning how to work with people of different languages, and how to correctly, some people, the language is crazy important. And some people it's like, if you can get it in our language, great. If not, we have enough English, capabilities that we're good. Then the cultural impacts, there's there's no single way of handling conversations across the globe. There's no universal politeness. And so making sure that you are doing everything you can not to accidentally offend somebody or miscommunicate because of cultural norms. We had to drop a lot of slang, had to stop doing, you had to stop doing a lot of, familiar, greetings and things like that. It had to be much more formal, not because they were demanded formal, but because at least that's understood a little bit more, and there's less of a chance of somebody having their feelings hurt or something being miscommunicated across. there's nothing worse than accidentally offending somebody. When you think you're doing and saying something positive and they take it as negative just because of either the tone or the way that those words translate into their language. It's hard, and we're doing a lot of this during COVID, and there are still also a lot of cultures who do work with a handshake and a beer. You do a lot of work, you do a lot of conversations during the day, but then after work, you go out and grab a beer and dinner, and that's when the agreements happen. And that's when, decisions on how to move forward intrinsically happen. And that's really hard to do over a Teams meeting
Yeah.
across the globe. So those are some of those challenges. The other, when we looked at our that security stack that we were building, we're going into these countries who have IT staff. There are 75 to 300 person companies in a small European or Asian, South American country. And we're walking in and saying, hey, we're going to use these gigantic enterprise tools. And they're like, why on earth would we go spend that kind of money and put that kind of complexity into our environment? And so there was also the challenge of teaching everyone that we weren't siloed countries anymore. We weren't siloed companies anymore when it came to SMC. The goal was, a cohesive company. So we didn't, we in IT no longer looked at it as 75 plus different companies, all using different tools. We looked at it as one company of about 25,000 employees. And then when you look at that, then the scale of what you're looking at is very different. You're not, you would never go look at the tools that we were providing in most of the countries because they didn't have enough people to even support the conversation with the manufacturers or the software companies. So that was a change too, because in an overall factory, value add, IT is supposed to help cost down. So everything there, they had all been kind of beaten into submission of if it costs money, it's bad from an IT standpoint, which absolutely in a manufacturing environment, IT has to find ways to lower cost. That's how we protect and help the company because we can't sell product. We don't make the product, but we can help that bottom line. So to maintain profitability. But it was one of those things where, there's a difference between spending money unnecessarily or unwisely, and then there's investing. And we were doing more of an investment strategy upon the entire organization rather than a spending campaign for a specific country or a specific company. So those are some big challenges. And then, at some point, I'm going to just write a book on challenges with international shipping of IT gear, especially to mainland China.
Oh no.
That was a disaster. It was, it was, I think we ended up, well, after I left, they found and just went a whole different direction to try to get stuff to China just because how you ship it, we were trying to do everything configured, but that doesn't necessarily go well through their customs. But we didn't want to send it just boxes because that doesn't go well through customs. So we wouldn't have access to really get there and configure it. So we were trying a lot of different things on how to make this work. And that'll end up becoming a book, probably multiple volumes of books with that pain. But unfortunately, it didn't help how many different logistics companies and providers and experts and consultants we were bringing into the picture. We were just having a real hard time understanding and getting it moving. And we would get different, getting different information depending on where in the supply chain you were and where in the world you were. So, international shipping is hard. And there's those people who can figure it out, pay them whatever they want and keep them wherever they are because they are worth their weight in gold if you're doing international shipping.
Yeah. These challenges are really unique, right? Not just because of the fact that it's international, but because of the scope of the project. It's so big. And you had to, figure out how to communicate well. You also had a lot of different ways you needed to communicate well. It wasn't consistent across the board, but you still had this initiative that you needed to complete or wanted to complete for the better of the company. These challenges, obviously the success was really great, but how did you end up finding the right tune to be able to enact that change company wide with all of
Yeah.
those sorts of
You
hiccups,
know,
if you will?
to be honest, it's people. I found and was able to put people, really fantastic people, both in my global IT organization, but also in the local and regional groups that could be our champion. It was no
Mm.
longer the U.S. telling them to do something. It was, hey, we're working with all these people, and the local IT person is the champion for you guys, and they're really loving it, and so they can be excited about it and can have those conversations. So we really took that communication strategy, and we had the global communication strategy, but then we had to create a regional communication strategy and then a localized communication strategy. And I was able to find some of the most amazing people I've ever met, inside my IT organization, outside the company, and inside the company and other countries and functions, who were willing and able and just phenomenal at helping us drive this initiative. It wouldn't have happened successfully any other way. And I think the interesting thing I have to on the conversation of the complexity and how different it was because is global. It is, but it's just a scaled up version of I think what a lot of people with any kind of multi-site, multi-function, multidisciplinary company experiences. Obviously, mine was at a scale that was massive, but it's the same. Learning how to communicate is an art, and once you learn the art and are adaptable to that, then scaling up and scaling down is something. It becomes a muscle memory at that point, and it's a hard muscle to learn. It took me years to figure it out, and I'm still not really, I think, great at it. But I talk to IT leaders of way smaller companies, and when they talk about the challenges they're having getting things done, it's how do I communicate to get people to want to help and want to be part of a change? How do I drive adoption? How do I make sure that I'm not offending or hurting the business in other ways? So that's the one thing I've loved learning by talking to my network and listening to so many of my colleagues is, every one of us, regardless if you're working for a Fortune 100 company or a small mom and pop manufacturing or retail company, even a technical service company, we're all facing roughly the Venn diagram of the issues and challenges we have is really big, more than we'd ever think. It's just a matter of context around it. But the same skills that would make you successful in one place have a lot of translating into being a good IT leader or being a good steward for IT or a good company leader in another organization, another function. It's that's the learning that I think a lot of people, whether they know it or not, are going under in these. If they keep their eyes open and their ears open, they go under that transformation, and then because the technical skills you bring to any job, not any job,
Sure.
many jobs can be learned, on the job. Uh, can be augmented on the job. Can be fine tuned on the job. It's really hard to change behavior, even if you want to. So, really learning how to change the behavior of how you communicate, it takes a lot of work. But it's just anyone who puts it in, no matter what size of company they're in or what size of group they're in, they'll see the dividends pay off down the road in whatever company they're in or group they're in, when they start exercising those muscles.
Yeah, I fully agree that communication is an art, and I would almost argue that communication is what drives change, is what allows
Yeah.
things to move and shift in a way that people are comfortable with. And like you said, it takes a long time to learn that. Obviously, you can't give like a one hit wonder to solve that. But what did you do to kind of hone your communication skills and improve that? And of course, you said I might not be the best at it, and you're still learning and improving. What do you do to improve your communication?
Yeah, I went through several any place where I could find some leadership training. I took that opportunity, and always communication is part of leadership training. I was lucky enough to be able to bring a coach in, and that was a lot of what we worked on is how am I communicating, and it a lot of times even wasn't like, Mike, how do you get in front of a group and talk, or Mike, how do you write this email? It was, what are you trying to say, and why are you trying to say it? What message are you actually trying to get out? But at the end of the day, doing it, the only way you get better at this type of thing is to actually do it, no matter how much education, skilling, out of context coaching you're getting, until you actually start communicating, and you can't get better at it, because you've got to see how people respond to your communication so you can fine tune that. Because what I learned talking to IT organizations throughout, that global organization, like I said, it isn't directly aligned to how I have conversations with the company I currently work for or with any of our customers. There's, once again, there's things that translate, but they're not the same. So the only way to do it is to do it. And just like everything, this is a great place for you to try to exercise those. You're going to fail, and you need to understand that that's okay. This is a very human thing, and failing at this is what's going to make you better. The successes make you more driven to try it again. But
Right.
you have to put a little bit of, you got to put your pride down. You've got to put, some of these things to the side. And, if you want to be that leader, you've got to realize why you're leading, and why you need to communicate something, and why you need to share this. And that's the what you have to go with. I think I've very rarely ever liked how I deliver a message. I always come back at the end going, I could have done it this way. I should have done it this way. Um, but the feedback you get from people, even if it's not the greatest communication, a lot of times they're thankful for clarity. They're thankful for communications. They're thankful for the opportunity to be a part of a change or ask questions that can help form a change. Which when you get out of that and drop that selfish, kind of that mindset of, okay, I could have done this better. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? The whole goal is to help the people you're communicating to understand what they're what's next, or how to help, or how to change, and be ready or be prepared. And if that's what got delivered, you at least check the box of what the goal was, and then you can go on and try to fine tune things, but you don't have to worry about uh, you know oh man, that was horrible, because I've been in those places where I've communicated something and it's deer in the headlights, and then you're like, oh man, not only did I, you know there were there delivery issues, but obviously I did not explain what I was trying to do in any way that people understood. And those are when you have to kind of take a mulligan and
Hmm.
come back and try it again, because you can't leave them hanging. But you've got to figure out a different way to get to them.
It's an interesting balance because you have to do it. You have to act to get better communication. You have to do it. But when you do it, you have to have this delicate balance of not being too hard on yourself because, you're trying to achieve the goal, but also being able to rationally look at it and go, how can I improve upon this the next time? Because it's not
Absolutely.
enough to just do it blindly and not do that reflection afterwards. Because if you're not aware of where you could get better, you can't get better at that thing. So it's that weird balance of being, okay, I did a good job, but I can do even better without negating the job that you had already done.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about it. Um, you know, Not that I'm Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan didn't miss practice after he won several rings. He still went to practice, because at the end of the day, there's always something you can learn. And Phil Jackson didn't help him learn how to shoot the ball. no way was Phil Jackson ever going to go, hey, Michael, no, move your left elbow in. That's not his job. His job is to point out the fact that there may be something he could improve, and then
We'll figure
he
out how
can
to do
go
it.
help
Yeah.
figure out how to improve it. And he's got to do it. He did it himself to figure out how, with the help of the people around him, but it was up to him. And most of these, what we consider, what are a lot of times called soft skills, are the same thing. You've got to do it. Michael Jordan was not Michael Jordan, when he started, you know, well,
Yeah.
maybe, but but there was a part where he sucked, I'm sure,
Yeah.
and it took practice, it took successes, it took failures, it took and it took time to become that person, and and a lot of times in IT, when we learn hard skills, we can use that skill and a lot of times be at a fairly high mastery level very quickly. And so when you get to these types of skills, these are very different than a lot of the technical skills that a lot of us in IT have spent a lot of time learning and that's been our identification, and how we've, been special as these hard technical skills and these abilities to do that. And now we're talking about skills that a lot of us didn't specifically got into IT not to do. I know so many people who got into IT so they didn't have to talk to people
Yeah.
or didn't have to communicate. Of course, that's gone. That those jobs are fewer and far between. But those are not the skills that we just have, and you can't just go to a class and learn how to talk and communicate, and then all of a sudden be a great communicator.
Right. You have to communicate and put yourself
Yeah.
out there. And that's the thing I was talking with. It's a huge reason why this podcast I think is so intriguing to me. I was talking to a previous guest and they were like, yeah, you were right, Jethro. You said IT is not getting the credit it deserves. And that's something we've had to learn. Like everything's tech now. We have to also learn how to do the business side of tech and how to
Mm-hmm.
communicate what we're trying to do and trying to change. Um, for the better of the business. It's not enough to just do the work of tech. We also have to now, because tech is such a huge part of business, we have to learn how to communicate and advocate for what we want in a way that makes everyone content and satisfied and understanding what is going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, the days of IT running a business from behind the curtains,
Hmm.
um, those are pretty much over. I mean, now if IT wants to be relevant, they have to be able to sit at the table and have the conversations with the business,
Yeah.
and better in in business talk rather than an IT talk.
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
Exactly. That's the other thing. The knowledge you need to have to discuss IT is very, very, very complex. And it's not, we can either go, oh, we'll sit here and expect everybody else to catch up to us, or we can figure out a way to better communicate in a way that makes sense to the people that are listening. Because you said communication is all about the audience, right? It's
mhm.
not about you. It's not about how great you sound or how smart you look. It's about, can I make the people that need to understand? And I think that shift too, because that's a shift in behavior, right? I think the shift in behavior is what improves that communication, because
Absolutely.
it's like, it's no longer about me. I'm doing this about you. So if I didn't do well, I'm just going to figure out how to get better the next time because I want you to understand. I don't remember where I heard it, but it was a stand-up comedian, and they were like, "That's my goal is to not look great, but to make people laugh." And so if I say a joke and they don't laugh, I don't go, "I suck." I go back to the drawing board and I refine that joke and I figure out
Mhm.
what didn't work and what does, and I continue that path. And I just think you alluded to that so well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so evolutionary, and yeah, you've like I said, you've got to be humble. You can't go into anything thinking you're the best in the world and that everyone's going to automatically do it. I've very rarely, provided any large scale communication without somebody coming back and going, "I'm unclear on this." And that is the for me, that is the first thing that I go back and try to start figuring out is,
That's
okay,
awesome.
how do I go make sure that this is clarity that I provide every time. And then there's times where I've gotten done with that communication, and somebody's like, "Yeah, that was really nice. Can you bring that down?" I got too IT, I got too technical in my conversation in it, and then it's the, hey, uh, most of your audience wasn't in IT, so we don't understand anything you just said. It still happens, and it's just, once again, it's just learning. It's being humble enough to understand that you're not going to be perfect.
Yeah. It's you mentioned earlier, right, that you aspired to be a music teacher at first, and teaching is a huge component to that because you have to remember where the student is at, not where
Mhm.
you are at. You have 20 years, 30 years of experience. That person does not. So you have to learn where they're coming from. What's obvious
Absolutely.
to you might not be obvious to them. And so you have to really let
Absolutely.
go of yourself.
I think the most, so highly of any teacher, any coach. Um, I think, I heard through a lot of the education I was getting about leadership is you have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And I think that is once again, that's a skill that we all didn't come out, we weren't all born with. You've really got to work hard to meet someone where they're at, um, with an empathetic, mindset. You can't meet them where they're at and be condescending because they're not where you want them to be.
Yeah.
I can tell you how frustrating it is when you're trying to push a change and somebody in you're 3 steps ahead of where you're trying to communicate, and so the change isn't happening the way you want it to happen. That's your fault because you didn't bring them along, so they don't know what needs to happen, or there's not clarity, which means they're not going to change. So that, yeah, I think those teachers out there who do that every day and then have to reset every year or every semester with a new set of kids or students, that's, to me, that's a huge skill that, man, and that's, it's, that, hats off to them. That's, one of the things that they all have to do best, because we're all lucky as professionals. Everything's progressive. We don't stop every August and start back from where we did last August. It's continual, where, teachers and coaches, every time there's somebody new comes in the door, they're starting from scratch again. They're starting from wherever the student is, or wherever, their client is. And that's a that's a really, that's what makes good teachers and coaches, is that ability to adapt.
You obviously when we talked about your project, this was the company before and it was a huge global sort of endeavor. But now you've moved to a much smaller, tight-knit group. Talk about that change and why you decided to make that shift.
Yeah, I mean, those those huge opportunities. I mean, you can't pass them up. I wouldn't have passed it up, given the opportunity a million times. There's so much I learned. I'm a far better leader, far better, IT leader, far better executive, because with capabilities, because of that opportunity. But there's times where you find out that the way, at the end of the day, it was my values, how I want to lead, things that became very personal and center to my being, were falling out of alignment with how a large organization ran. And that, and it's to no fault of anyone. That's growth. I was growing at a different pace, in a different direction. They have to grow thinking of 25,000 people and all their customers and shareholders and things like that. I was thinking about me. And so, I took that opportunity to go find something else to do that better aligned with who I was becoming and where I wanted to grow. Um, Going from 25,000 ish people to 40 ish people is a huge change. Um, there are many things that the pace is so much faster because there's no, the bureaucracy doesn't exist. We're too small to have some of the bureaucracy. Um, a lot of the culture is very easy to drive and support and make phenomenal, because um, you don't have to try to figure out all the cultural impacts. You don't have to figure out, I'm in a services group, so everyone is, a professional at that level. So you're not trying to figure out how to, you know, combine culturally, office employees and factory employees and warehouse employees and, and engineering people over here and HR people over here. It's, everyone wears so many hats. You don't have time for that. There was a challenge though. That Stockholm syndrome that you kind of get after being in a huge company for 16 years. I couldn't execute on certain things without asking for permission. As the executive, as the person who's responsible for something, in those large companies, you still have to ask if you can do it because of the impact. And when I would get ready to do something and I turn to the leadership team I'm on and go, is this okay if I can do this? And they're all just looking at me like, why are you asking us?
Yeah.
We don't care. We don't know. Are you going to break something? Are you going to affect, do you know what you're doing? Do you know
Yeah,
why you're doing it? And,
exactly.
and if the answer to those are yes, and you know what's going on, why are you asking? And that took a while
That's a shift.
to
That's right.
to really break from, just for the simple fact that that became a learned behavior. But what I get to do now, because it's a smaller group, I get to have my hands in things that affect IT and the IT effects that are not necessarily IT specific. I get more visibility into things outside of IT. I can see the effects of IT on other things much faster and in a closer state. So it is definitely very different, but it's very cool. Once again, and I've also been able to find out, a lot of the problems we have, a lot of things I'm trying to solve are the same things we were trying to solve, at a global manufacturing organization. It's figuring out the right scale in which to do it. I can't walk into a 40 person, technical services company and go, hey, I want to go buy this $5 million system and put it over here. That destroys a company our size, and there's no ROI on a company our size. So going back to the conversation of what business value am I trying to deliver? What am I actually trying to solve here? And then, I had to start thinking of solutions differently again. So there's a lot of things that are really fun because there are a lot more solutions out there and ways to fix things, especially in the small medium enterprise, than there is in the huge enterprise, just because of competitors have gobbled each other up, companies have gone out of business, but the amount of innovation and companies that are sitting in that small medium business and enterprise space is just amazing. And it's been really fun. It's fun to have a impact that you can see every day.
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
so
I mean, I was. It's such an interesting shift to go from the. You went from extreme to extreme. It wasn't like you like
absolutely.
weaned off. So I appreciated that you brought up the that learned behavior that you have to unlearn.
Yeah,
It's such a it's communication all over again, right?
absolutely.
It's that recurring theme.
And what you can and can't do.
Yeah,
you know
exactly, exactly. You gotta it's nothing is as objective as it seems. It depends on the
that's
scenario. It's very
absolutely.
situational. Yeah. I have two questions for you. One, obviously you have a new background. We're doing this on another day because the conversation was so good that we had to do we had to do it twice. I see books in the background. I'm curious, you seem like someone who likes to learn a lot and improve themselves. What are some specific resources, books, podcasts, uh, newsletters that you sort of recommend to other people?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Depending on what you're trying to grow, books, you'll never go wrong being a reader. And to be clear, reading is not having a physical book necessarily. So I have a lot of physical books because, but I typically consume through audiobooks.
Mm.
But I have the physical book because if something hits me, I need a reference, because trying to figure out how to, tagging, this minute to this minute in a audiobook I haven't figured that one out yet. So grabbing the book and, loosely following along, I know, hey, we're chapter 3. Okay, this is about where it is. And now I can bookmark, highlight, and have something to keep. But I, anytime I have more than about 30 minutes in a car, it's an audiobook. Less than 30, I'm rocking it out. But more than 30, I try to listen to something, and those, they go from all over the place. I mean, I've got books on leadership. I've got books on becoming a better person in general. I've got books on sales. A skill IT people need to realize they have and they need to tune is their sales capabilities. They sell every day, whether you're in sales or not, whether you're in a services organization or a Fortune 100 organization, you're selling something every day. So learning how to sell, learning about business. So there's several business focused books, learning how do CEOs think? How did this company come and become so, you know, uh, you know, uh, so successful and then just fade away? What are the company? What are your top CEOs actually thinking? And there's been some that I've learned, and I'm like, man, now I don't like that CEO. And there's been some that I'm like, oh, now I actually see everything that they've done, and that I understand why they would do things like that. Um, there's some great books out there on accounting. Once again, IT. I think any leader needs to understand accounting. But IT, it's so critical that we understand the accounting processes because we have such a huge impact on those processes. We have such a huge impact on the bottom line. Knowing where to see that and how to measure that is huge in our ability from a leadership standpoint to be successful. So there's obviously a lot of inspirational books, a lot of books on change. There's a lot of great theories on change. There's a lot of great theories on different types of frameworks to get faster and better. I typically don't subscribe to any one, but there's ones that I do not care for, but I still learn about them because I want to understand, do I not care for it? What's my bias against this?
Yeah.
Is it because other people don't like it, or is it because I actually know about it? And then I've always been loved history. So I listen to, then those I try to listen to lectures. History books to me tend to be boring. But there are some fantastic lectures out there that are available on YouTube and through podcasts, going through, world history, U.S. history, not from a boring, here's what they already taught you in high school, but kind of here's you read 3 pages of a textbook about this event. For 3 hours, we're going to talk about everything that actually happened beforehand, what actually happened during, what the impact was after the fact. So learning about that, you learn a lot about human behavior, and about how, a lot of the things that we see and are upset about and have, dissonance between people in our country now is not really a lot different than what's been going on, for the last thousands of years. It's just different topics in different areas of the world and different, classes and different, things like that. So understanding that also helps put things into perspective, as well as that. But no, definitely, reading's huge. Podcasts are great. Once again, I think to a certain degree, the exercise of learning is important regardless of what you're learning. Because there's times where I'll learn something and I'm like, I'll never use that, but the experience of getting that piece of knowledge or understanding something helps me then to figure out how to do something different the next time. It's those transferable skills you start learning in those experiences. But no, I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. I think that's an easy one. But there's some phenomenal books depending on if you want to be a better person, want to be a better leader, want to build a better company, run IT faster. And for me, it's absorbing as much of that in as possible. I love reading emotional and stories from leaders about how they made decisions they made and how they've come out better, or how their company has come out better, or why they do things. Like I said, every time you do that, you learn something different, and it eventually helps form how you react to situations.
Yeah.
From a technical aspect, I think we talked Reddit, subreddit, podcasts, going down YouTube rabbit holes, are all, for me, common ways I start those conversations, and you end up 3-4 hours later going, what did I originally start trying to look for? And you realize that all the other things you've learned for, definitely podcasts like this. You guys, what the ability that you provide people to understand and hear from other IT professionals and leaders and peers, that they're not that different, that there are ways to have a higher impact, that there are things out there that you can do. That's really powerful for a lot of IT people. I don't think, I don't think we can have enough of these types of things out there.
Agreed.
Because I learn from these types of, I'll learn from this conversation a bunch of stuff.
Right. Me too.
But I learn from other conversations that you have, with other IT leaders and other IT, and about just different points of view, different frame mindsets, frameworks, things like that I'm not exposed to, or I may have overlooked, or things like that, and that's useful for all of us too. So
Yeah. Well, the final question to close this podcast, and you obviously said a lot of great nuggets throughout this conversation, but this is the final time to say your piece. Any final pieces of recommendation, thoughts, just to kind of pieces of advice, if you will, just to kind of close this all off.
yeah, I guess a call I would put out to everyone is, if you're interested in being a leader, there's two things that helped me that I think help everyone, and I encourage anyone to do it. Find mentors. Find people you respect who are further along the journey than you are, who are willing to help you get there. They're not going to get. They're going to help be a sounding board for you. They're going to smack you upside the head when you are just doing something. When you're blind to something that's right in front of your face. But at the same point, they're going to be an empathetic ear, because they're going to be like, yeah, man, I was just there. And this is how I took on that situation, and you learn a lot of it. And the other is, become a mentor. There's always somebody else who's trying to do this that you can help. I don't believe personal development is a solo adventure. I do believe it is somewhat of a team sport, and finding that team. So the call would be, if you are, trying to be a leader, both find a way to be a mentor to somebody. And a lot of that is, making it known and being available, and find mentors. And, for me, my mentors, I add, and, I'd say I never did subtract a mentor, but I add mentors as I progress, because I'm now, in places where I'm having the same experiences as some of my first mentors had. So, we can have different conversations, but I now pull a mentor in that's doing something completely different than me. So now I can get that extra bit of knowledge and connection, and then just build that connection. And to a certain degree, from a leadership standpoint, that goes whether or not you want to be an official organizational leader or not. Primary, the first person you need to figure out how to lead is yourself. And so if you're an individual contributor, understanding leadership and how it works within you personally is still huge. So that leadership journey, everyone should be going on. And everyone is, whether they realize it or not, but making it intentional is huge. That, to me, that's the biggest thing. It is relying on each other to do this. And at the end of the day, it also builds a great network for you that will help you in so many other ways.
Yeah.
It builds a lot of friendships and camaraderie. I've been lucky enough to even be able to hire some of my mentors to do projects for us and to help drive certain change that I know they have expertise in, rather than me just trying to figure it out. I'm like, hey, you know how to do this. And, and I'm a fan, because, I'm learning from you. Can you just do this? So, I mean, that those are kind of things that I think happen a lot in the IT industry and a lot of people don't talk about and know about, but I think they happen quite a bit. And I think they need to make sure that we need to make sure as leaders in IT, whether once again organizational or just because of behaviors and because of what you do, we need to keep pushing that message.
Thank you, Michael, for your time, for your thoughts, for your experience. I really enjoyed our conversation. I got a lot out of it, and I hope that anyone who does listen to this or watches this gets something out of it too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having a podcast like this that provides that platform for people.
Yeah, I only hope it continues to grow. So, well,
Absolutely.
Again, thank you for your time and take care.
Thank you.
VCOM Solutions is here to help make your IT projects and day-to-day operations as easy and efficient as possible. If you'd like to see how VCOM can help your organization save time and money, request a demo at vcomsolutions.com/demo. Do you work in IT? Be a guest on Braindrop. Go to vcomsolutions.com/Braindrop guest to sign up. Thanks again for dropping in. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can find us on social media at VCOM Solutions. Until next time.